Now let's turn our attention to the U.S. election, where it appears things are happening so fast. We understand that the first polls have now ended. I'm joined by White House Bureau Chief of Voice of America, Patsy Widakuswara. Patsy, thank you for joining us on the news tonight. What would you say is standing out from the first few hours of this election?
Well, voting is still ongoing, so we won't know the first results until the voting are closed in the East Coast. That's in a couple of hours. In the West Coast, of course, we have to wait a little bit longer. Now, the polls are showing that the race is very, very tight. So if the polls are correct, it will take longer to figure out who will win this race. It could take a couple of days. I mean, if you remember in 2020, we didn't know the results until Saturday. Nevertheless, right now at Harris headquarters here in Washington, D.C., at Howard University, her alma mater, preparations are on the way. The vice president and her VP pick, Governor Tim Walz, will be here later tonight. But before that, she made time to make some phone calls to voters at the Democratic National Committee's headquarters here in Washington, D.C. So this may be like a little bit of a difference between the U.S. and your country, where there is no calm period, where there's no campaigning. Candidates here get to the last minute to make sure that every voter turns out.
What would you say the turnout looks like relative to the election in 2020?
Well, certainly there's enthusiasm on both sides. We can see this from what's called early voting or mail-in voting. Here in the U.S., there are 50 states, and many of those states, not all of those states, allow some form of early voting or mail-in voting. And we have seen so far more than 80 million people voted early, meaning before election day today. And of course, voting are ongoing. Voting is ongoing in all the U.S. states. And we won't know until later, but definitely both campaigns are saying that their turnout is better, their ground game is better, their enthusiasm is better. And of course, who is the one who's telling the truth? We'll see what happens when the results come in.
With over 80 million early votes, walk us through what impact that would have on the waiting time before election results become public.
So that depends. So if you think about elections in the U.S., it's not like thinking about one election. Think about it as 50 elections from 50 different states going on in parallel. So each state has different rules in terms of who can vote, where to vote, what time to vote, restrictions to vote, and also in terms of how votes are counted. If, for example, in Battle State, Pennsylvania, where we won't know the election results until many days later, perhaps, it's because elections that are mail-in ballots that are sent before election day, they can't be counted until today. So those ballots, those envelopes will have to be opened, the ballots will have to be processed, tabulated, checked, and so on. So it's a complicated process. And remember, in the U.S., it's not a direct one person, one vote, but it's through what is called the Electoral College system, meaning that Americans actually vote for a group of electors who will then vote for the presidential candidate of their choice. So to win, you need 270 Electoral College votes out of 238. And right now, the path is equally possible for both Harris and Trump to do that, depending on which battleground states they win. And when I say battleground states, what I mean is states that are very highly competitive, that is not predictably Republican or predictably Democratic in past elections. And in 2024, those battleground states include Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and also Pennsylvania, which is the biggest prize of all with 19 electoral votes.
Very interesting, particularly when you see how allegiance are changing fast in between election year in the United States. But what stands out for you as regards the main issues that is determining how voters will decide today?
Well, the important issues for voters in 2024, we can say that there are three particularly high-mind issues. Number one is the economy. And in this respect, many voters, according to polls, show that they trust Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris. People are not happy with inflation, even though inflation in the United States compared to other countries is relatively low. In fact, right now it's quite close to pre-pandemic levels. Still, the Donald Trump campaign likes to use this issue as to point out as a failure of the Biden administration and by extension the Harris potential administration. Number two is immigration. This is something that Donald Trump really likes to focus on: illegal immigration, border security, something that he says is a dire problem that became out of control under Biden and also Harris. Number three is the issue of abortion. So Trump appointed 3 judges to overturn a Supreme Court ruling called Roe v. Wade, which provided constitutional protection for women to have access to legal and safe abortion. Because of this is an issue that's really motivating many Harris supporters, many women. You can see there's a huge gender gap among the voters who vote for Harris are largely women compared to men who tend to vote for Trump. So those 3 issues: immigration, economy, and also abortion, are the 3 top issues in American voters' minds. Of course, the issue of foreign policy, although usually not a big deal, a big issue in U.S. elections, this year is different because of U.S. involvement through supporting Israel and Ukraine. So these are the issues that are of concern to American voters.
Absolutely. We're hearing Arab and Muslim voters speaking out about their interest in this regard. Thank you so much for the updates there. White House Bureau Chief, Voice of America, Patsy Widakuswara. Thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.